Those of you who don't know David Summers may know that he's a distinguished historian, not least of Renaissance themes, and of course that means you come across rhetoric and you become a master of rhetoric. So thank you for that rhetorical introduction, which has probably more rhetoric than substance in terms of my own efforts. I did look at the previous speakers. I started looking at the list of previous speakers and the Page-Barbour lectures and stopped. It was really scary. Walter has scared me again by pulling them out. It's also interesting to think, in 5 years' time, will I be mentioned or will I be one of the others? So I think I better do well, otherwise I'm in difficulty. But it is a privilege to be here. The Jefferson country, and Jefferson is one of my heroes, and as you will see, he appears not gratuitously in this particular lecture. I shall also say in relation to Christ the Pope, and this is an important announcement, I'd be happy if the man with the Che Guevara t-shirt would say hello afterwards, and I'll take a photograph if he's willing. Where is he? Yeah, there you are, right in the back. Yeah. Anyway, a piece of living history. So there we are. Now I'll tell you about the design of the poster. Good. The title has changed, and this happens, but basically the substance is the same. The background to these, and this is not meant to be self-advertisement, it just gives you a sense of the enterprise that you'll be hearing, are the essays I began to write in 1997 in Nature. Once a week I did it at one point. It seems sort of slightly unbelievable, not because there are too few topics, but once a week is kind of quick. Anyway, I haven't been writing it since 1869. This is the original masthead of Nature, which is a great work of art and can be analysed as I've done in its own right. Out of these essays, first of all in 2000 came Visualizations, which is an anthology with an introduction, trying to group them under headings and making some sort of sense. Then a more joined up version in Seen, Unseen, which is a book which I think somewhat disappeared and not been taken much note of. And then finally, a group of people I've worked with, not under my volition, but people like Harry Proto, the Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, Cecil Balmont, who will be appearing, and a number of artists, put together something called Acts of Seeing. So what's been happening is I've been lecturing on these, I've been developing this, that's from 2000 onwards in published form. And it's a kind of rolling enterprise in which new examples come in, the ideas evolve, they roll on, they metamorphose. So the Page-Barbour lectures give me a chance to have another deep breath and a gathering in, and to publish where the current state of play is in my thinking. But it's a rolling and evolving program. And it's centred upon what I've called structural intuitions, which have now become the title of the lecture, and indeed probably we shall see of the book that comes out of them. What I mean by structural intuitions is the interplay between orders in nature at lots of different levels, from very small, the smallest we can conceive, to the largest, and the structures we have cognitively, perceptually and cognitively, to interact with these in some sort of dynamic feedback. I'm not going to go into the philosophical implications of that at this stage, but I will probably develop that more in the published version. I can best explain it with what now is a relatively familiar example, or two examples. One which is personal. This 2 Easters ago, one of my grandsons had given me a little chocolate Easter egg, and I have a pine dining table in the kitchen, and I have a walnut which I use as a kind of worry bead. It gets remarkably polished, as you can see, which tells you something, I suppose. But it struck me that this is something that I've always done, and I suspect a lot of people in biology, a lot of people in visual arts, and in other areas do this. As of as children, we looked at things and sensed an order, the shape of something, echoing shapes of things. The flame in a fire, the ridges of sand on the seashore, the spirals of a pine cone, they're familiar examples. As a child I was fascinated by them, and I think that's what got me into natural sciences. I think we all do it, and we all gain pleasure from it. This conjunction of the nut, the knot, and the chocolate Easter egg, there may be nothing interesting to say about them, or there may be. It's a starting point for an intuition. It may be the relationship between them is entirely coincidental and trivial. It may be cogent, it may be suggestive, or it may have no mileage in it at all. So you can't assume that your intuition or this particular starting point is going to yield anything. But it's always interesting when the trivial or the inconsequential suddenly becomes cogent. You can never tell in developing areas of art and science when that happens. And you dismiss what looks coincidental or trivial or without significance, you dismiss that at our peril. Because it may be that's actually where the next bit of action lies. Seem to be, and the other little preface to this is that I'm going to be looking at a number of artists, and since nobody's now paying me to be a professional academic, I can be much more indulgent and personal. And the artists I'm looking at are all ones I've worked with in some way or other, so there'll be an overtly personal dimension to this particular interplay. And a number of the scientists and the engineers also I'll be looking at, I've had some kind of personal dealings with, so this is David was kind enough to mention this particular engagement, which I think is important for a historian, to have this dialogue between people who are reshaping what we think the fields of knowledge, the visual fields are. These are the kind of artists to whom I react very well. It's a personal reaction. Andy Goldsworthy, who will be figuring big, one of his cairns. Peter Randall Page, a rock with Fibonacci series spirals on it. The bottom left is Chris Drury, lesser known, but a very interesting land artist. And the wall pattern on the back there is the large spore print, and the CGATs are DNA which is found in the soil on a particular spot. And Jonathan Callan, who will be shortly appearing, these are bent books. And this relates very much to the second lecture and the sense of process, of squeezing, folding, and processes that result in particular configurations. And I think very beautiful, rather well known in Los Angeles, where he probably gets more mileage than he does in Britain. And it's Jonathan Callan who, in a sense, will refine what I mean by structural intuitions. In London, I went into Jonathan Callan's studio, and he was sieving plaster, it turned out to be cement plaster, which he found worked rather well, onto a plate in which a series of holes had been drilled at irregular intervals, not randomly, but irregularly. And this is a cross-section of that process going on in the trial plate, one which is rather bent under the weight, and you can see what happens, unsurprisingly, is that the cement powder runs through the hole, accumulates underneath, but it's the configurations on top which are marvellously interesting and suggestive. And these he's turned into what he calls dust landscapes. You see one in the top right-hand corner. Sometimes they're whole room signs with a walkway which lets you look at them. And they are extraordinary. Looking in a sense like nano images, but more immediately a kind of landscape, as he said, with these mountains and their parabolic holes and their sinks. I said to him, let's photograph these from the top. I'm sorry some of these slides have been clipped laterally. I hope we will solve this problem by tomorrow.